When the dinosaurs died out, their legacy of terror lived on. In the hills of Argentina, scientists have uncovered the bones of a new breed of killer. This mammoth beast, the most feared predator of its day, was no reptile or mammal. It was a killer bird. In northern Argentina, the shadow of the Andes falls on a forbidding wasteland. Few venture here. It has little to offer, but the searing heat of summer and harsh, barren landscape. Giant killers lie hidden in these hills. Local villagers were the first to find their enormous bones in the desert. Word spread quickly, luring scientists hoping to uncover more remains of these mysterious creatures. Among the first to arrive in 1926 was an expedition led by Elmer Riggs of Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History. They thought they were tracking a giant prehistoric mammal. But while digging in the hot sun, they made an incredible discovery: the skull of a massive bird. This was no ordinary bird. Andalgalornis, as it was later named, had a skull longer than a horse's. A fearsome predator, it stood 5 feet tall and weighed 250 pounds. Birds appeared about 150 million years ago. Archaeopteryx, the oldest known species, was able to fly. Most of its descendants inherited this ability, but some birds were earthbound. Like ostriches, Andalgalornis lost the power of flight, but in return, it gained the power to kill. Today, the badlands of Argentina are dominated by the Andes, but millions of years ago, South America was a very different place. There was no great mountain range yet, only vast wind-swept plains that seemed to stretch to eternity. South America was one enormous island, isolated from the rest of the world. When killer birds evolved here, they took over, becoming top predators, a dynasty that would last for millions of years. Following in the footsteps of the first expedition, paleontologist Bob Chandler from the Florida Museum of Natural History has brought his team to Argentina to study the lair of these flesh-eating birds.
And we will be collecting from sediments approximately 50 meters down section from that ash bed.
Chandler's work reveals just how terrifying and powerful these birds really were.
All of these killer birds are some of the most spectacular large birds that ever lived. I think we can say that these birds, with their enormous sizes, that they were actually the heirs to the dinosaurs, that they were able to kill as efficiently as some of the larger dinosaurs could.
These predatory birds, known as forest racoids, evolved into a variety of different species. No animal was safe from this gang of killers. They were the most dangerous birds to ever inhabit this planet. They ranged in size from medium to gigantic. Compared to the hawk, a modern bird of prey, killer birds like Andalgalornis were in a class by themselves. These massive creatures used their bone-crushing jaws and slicing beaks to kill quickly and efficiently. Another killer, Onyctornis, weighed in at 500 pounds. Its skull was more than 3 feet long. Killer birds took over where the dinosaurs left off. Their bones are clues to this lost world, a world where birds ruled. Bob Chandler is dedicated to unlocking the secrets of the mammoth birds. What kind of creatures were they? How did they hunt and kill their prey? When killer birds evolved in South America about 25 million years ago, there were no predatory mammals to compete with them. They reigned supreme. They could eat anything they wanted, and there were many strange creatures to choose from. Megatherium was a giant sloth. Rearing on its hind legs to feed on vegetation, it was as tall as a 2-story building, 10 times the size of a modern sloth. The peculiar Glyptodon was a vegetarian the size of a small car and armored like a tank. Size and armor may have provided some protection from killer birds, but others, such as the horse-like Didaphorus, were at their mercy, practically defenseless against the vicious jaws of birds like Andalgalornis. Like the flightless ostrich today, killer birds were exceptionally fast. They could race along the grasslands at 40 miles per hour. A successful hunt depended on this great speed, combined with the element of surprise.
Andalgalornis would have lived in a savanna environment, and it would have laid in ambush in the tall grasses and would have killed the animal probably with one bite onto the backbone of that animal, killing it almost immediately. And then with its claws, it had probably 2-inch claws, it would impale the animal and hold it down, and then with its long beak, it would shred the meat and eat gulps of the animal that way.
Unlike the beaks of modern birds, which are rounded, a killer bird had a beak which was flattened, producing a very thin, sharp edge. It could slice through bone. Equipped with a perfect combination of speed, power, and terror, it could capture and devour its prey in only a few minutes. In his quest to learn more about Andalgalornis, Bob Chandler goes beyond bones and fossils. One way to find out about the behavior of extinct animals is to observe their living relatives. For killer birds, it's a creature called a seriama.
Living seriamas are the closest relatives to the extinct forest rakids that like Andalgalornis, and they did have a distant common ancestor somewhere back approximately 30 to 40 million years ago. The Seriamas are much more stalking animals. They eat small invertebrates and small mammals, whereas a bird like Andogolornis, it actually came out of ambush and attacked its prey, was a very active and dynamic predator.
While the Seriama provides some clues to the way Andogolornis looked and acted, one key piece of fossil evidence was still missing. The wing bone had never been found. Paleontologists assumed its wings were used mainly for balance, like the Seriama. But new findings by Chandler have solved the mystery of the missing wing bone. His unusual discovery reveals that these flesh eaters were more deadly than anyone had imagined. Three million years ago, the kingdom of the killer birds changed forever. The island of South America collided with North America, forming the Panamanian land bridge. Now, killer birds were no longer restricted to their homeland. Some migrated north, eventually crossing the land bridge and settling in North America. Proof of this has been found in the waters of the Santa Fe River in Florida. The river runs through a sinkhole where the remains of dead animals were trapped and eventually fossilized. For Chandler, it was a gold mine. He would find the solution to the wing bone mystery underwater.
Scuba diving has to be one of the more exotic and fascinating standpoints of my research because, in fact, here I am underwater trying to excavate and take good data. What I've devised is a dredge system where I'm actually vacuuming up a riverbed in north central Florida, producing many thousands of fossils for my own and other research. You're in a completely different environment, and it's very alluring. Sometimes you actually lose track of time while you're collecting these important bone beds, and you're looking for more and more fossils. You sometimes, in fact, put out of your mind other things that are swimming right around you. In fact, we've had one diver come in contact with an alligator.
Chandler had uncovered some enormous specimens. They belonged to Titanus walleri, a killer bird that had once lived in South America. Its fossils would help him solve many puzzling questions about these giant predatory birds. Chandler compared the bones to those of Andogolornis. Then he set off for Chicago to examine the fossils brought back to the Field Museum by Elmer Riggs. He was given special access to the original specimens collected 70 years ago. Chandler soon made a remarkable discovery. Titanus walleri was even larger than Andogolornis. Each bone and fragment dredged from the Santa Fe River was at least 20% larger than the specimens Riggs had found. Titanus walleri was enormous, a giant among giants. It would have stood 6 feet tall, but Chandler had learned something even more important from these bones. Titanus was the key to solving the mystery of the missing wing bone of Andogolornis. In birds, the arm and hand bones have become the wing. Upper bones can tuck under the lower bones, allowing them to fold their wings. Chandler now had a wing bone of a killer bird, but it was very peculiar.
This is the fused hand bones of Titanus walleri. And the interesting thing with this element is that it now has a flatted proximal end, which would not allow the bone to be tucked back under the ulna radius or the lower limb bone.
As soon as he saw this unusual bone, Chandler knew he had the missing link in the story of Andogolornis and the killer birds. Chandler's discovery of the Titanus wingbone shed new light on killer bird anatomy. This led him to re-examine the current beliefs about what these birds looked like and how they lived. They were not just flightless birds with vestigial wings. They had developed a unique kind of wing, unlike that of any bird living or extinct. Chandler believes their wings were modified to function like powerful arms and were used to hold down and manipulate their prey. These killing machines took over South America with a reign of terror that lasted for 20 million years. We now know one of the reasons for their great success. In an odd twist of bird anatomy, their wings developed into lethal weapons, which made them fearsome predators. They sacrificed the ability to fly in order to become more efficient killers. But there were others who sacrificed nothing at all. Soaring high above was another enormous predator, the largest bird of prey ever to have darkened the skies. Today, the skies of Argentina are patrolled by the condor. With a wingspan of 8 feet, it is the largest flying bird that exists. The condor rarely kills its food. It's a vulture that feeds on the dead. But millions of years ago, these skies belonged to a mammoth hunter that swept in from out of thin air. Argentavis magnificens was the largest bird that ever lived. Its wingspan was 27 feet, more than 3 times that of a condor. Argentavis was the size of a small plane. Dr. Rosando Pascual of the La Plata Museum in Buenos Aires made the incredible discovery of this flying giant. At first, he couldn't believe that these enormous bones came from a creature that could fly.
Encontramos estos huesos. Por el espesor del hueso.
While searching for fossil mammals, we found these bones. The thinness of the bones made us think that they were from a bird, but their sheer size made us think it was impossible that a bird so big could fly. But after digging up the rest of the bones, there was no disputing the evidence. This was definitely a bird that could fly. This is a humerus from the wing, and this is a humerus belonging to a condor. Look at the size relationship. If the proportions of this wing bone were maintained in the rest of the body, the wing must have had a span of some 9 meters. Can you imagine a bird with a wingspan of 9 meters that can fly? Argentavis weighed 170 pounds and stood 6 feet tall. Flying for this gargantuan bird would seem to be an impossible feat. Yet somehow, it did get off the ground. Argentavis, believed to be a relative of the condor, may have taken off in a similar fashion. The condor stands up, unfolds its wings, and faces into the wind. A strong gust provides the power for liftoff. But for a giant like Argentavis, the wind would have to be tremendous. Where would this wind come from? When Argentavis owned these skies, there were no mountains to inhibit the flow of air from the sea. Argentavis magnificens would have waited for a powerful gust to launch it into the air. There, it became a predator, hunting for a victim. Or was it a scavenger, looking for a carcass? Scientists assumed it was a scavenger like the condor. If so, it would have had a bald head, an adaptation which prevents scavengers from getting rotting flesh caked on their feathers as they feed. But recent analysis of Argentavis's head bones reveals it had a long hooked beak and jaws like those of modern birds of prey. Not a scavenger, but a fearsome predator. Argentavis would swoop down from the skies, carry off its prey, and swallow it whole. Since it was a predator, it was clear that Argentavis had a feathered head. The picture of this giant was now complete. Killer birds ruled the land and sky, but they too had powerful forces to reckon with. Something was happening in South America, something that would threaten every living creature. The formation of the Panamanian land bridge over millions of years created a new world. Animals could now cross in both directions, intermingling and competing. But that was only part of the story. Two continents had collided, an upheaval that altered the earth. Over time, the land, the climate, the vegetation would radically change. The days of the killer birds were numbered. Some believe they died out because of competition with animals that migrated from the north. Others believe they simply had nothing to eat. Unable to adapt to the new environment, their prey became extinct. And soon after, so did the killer birds. Though the South American members of this family, like Andogolornis, may have died out, the story of these giants was not over yet. Some birds, like Titanus walleri, used the land bridge to migrate to North America and escape extinction. For a while.
With the evolution of this group, they in fact were even more successful, and its pinnacle species, Titanus walleri, in fact made the connection from South America to North America, lived in Florida approximately 2 million years, competing side by side with other mammalian predators, and did very well for itself throughout that whole period.
Paleontologists like Bob Chandler continue to search for more clues to a mysterious world where mammoth birds once terrorized this land. Today, these giants are gone. Yet their descendants are still among us. We can only imagine what evolution holds in store for them. Might there still come a time when killer birds will return to power once again?